Hi there. So in this lesson, I'm going to talk about how you write a letter, formal letter, to someone that you know. So this is one of the three types of letters that you'll need to be able to write before you do the IELTS exam. And in this lesson, I'm going to go over the material that you can find on the website. So if you go to the website and if you look in the lesson notes, you'll see the letter that appears in this lesson. So if you haven't seen the lesson notes yet, go to the website and read the letters before the lesson, or you can just follow along as I go. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are, and as you can see, this is a formal letter, dear dot 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 dot, and it's a letter to a manager. So again, in this case, I'm just going to say dear Mr. or dear Ms. To keep things simple for myself and remind myself that this is a formal letter to someone that I know. So more specifically, you're working for a company, so it's about work. You need to take some time off work and want to ask your manager about this. Write a letter to your manager. In your letter, explain why you want to take time off work, give details of the amount of time you need, suggest how your work could be covered while you're away. So again, while I'm thinking of vocabulary, a lot of it's going to be related to work, the job that I do for this third part, the amount of time I need, so dates, explain why you want to take time off work. So I'm going to come up with a reason why I need time off work. And again, I might think of some vocabulary related to that also. So it could just be, I'm going to go on holiday. Perhaps I can't think of any vocabulary for that particular part, but you don't need tons of topic specific vocabulary for your letter for band 7 and band 8. But you should think of a few phrases for the letter, and if you can think of one or two for each, that's good. So let's have a look. So dear Mr. Brown, I am writing to request some time off next month. So the purpose of the letter is take some time off. You want to ask your manager about this. So you wouldn't say, I'm writing to inform you that I'll be taking some time off next month, because it's a request. And this is the kind of thing that you would generally need to ask permission for. So request, time off, I just used the same word from the question. That's fine. There are lots of different situations with synonyms. Some of them can help you and some of them can hurt you. So if you are using a synonym that is an appropriate synonym, and you're using it correctly, then that's going to be good in terms of, showing the examiner that you've got a wide range of vocabulary. If you use a synonym which is not appropriate, that's not going to be good. Sure, the examiner will probably understand what you mean, but if it's not really an appropriate synonym, then it's actually going to hurt your score rather than help it. So again, remember, the purpose of this letter and the purpose of the IELTS test is to measure your ability to communicate clearly in English. So repeating words is absolutely fine, and you should think about, for this particular one, I repeat this, I use a synonym for time off later in the letter, but again, like, probably if I sat down for 10 minutes, I could think of lots of different synonyms, but again, it's not essential, and you need to balance your ability to use vocabulary, a range of vocabulary, communicate clearly, and to do all of that in the time that you have. Okay, so explain why you want to take time off work. The reason for my request is that my brother, who lives in Chicago, is getting married next month, and my family and I are planning to attend the wedding there. So I've done that. I've said the reason. Our extended family will be traveling from many different locations around the country, so it will also serve as a long-awaited family reunion. So that probably strikes you as a bit strange. I've already told my manager why I want to take the time off. This is maybe like a bit too much detail. I probably wouldn't really go into that much detail in that type of situation. However, when I was thinking about it, I thought of that's some good vocabulary I can use: extended family, long-awaited family reunion. So that's the reason I did that. Again, that's not essential. You could leave that detail out and put more detail somewhere else. And if you look at the 3 bullet points, so explain why you want to take time off work. That's relatively simple. Give details of the amount of time, also relatively simple. Suggest how your work could be covered. Again, you could go into more detail there. And how you would do this would depend on how you approach the question, how you thought about the particular question that you get. So for me, I pretty much kept the body paragraphs. They're all about the same, a little bit longer here. If you can't think of much to say for these first two about explain why you want to take time off work and give details about the amount of time. If you've just got a sentence that clearly and adequately states that, that's fine. And then you can go into more detail later. For me, it was easier to do it this way. What you want is the total level of development and the total way that you have met the aims or the goals of the letter is what the examiner is looking for. So the ceremony will be held on Saturday the 16th. So I would like to take leave from Wednesday. So take leave from work is another phrase that you can use for take time off. So from this date through this date, so through a certain date just means including that date. So if I say, from Wednesday the 14th through Wednesday the 21st, that means I'm going back to work on Thursday. These letters are always a bit strange, the ones to your manager, because I always feel like you have to give more detail than you normally would. Our plan is to drive, and this way we'll have plenty of time to stop along the way and see the local sites as well. So it's a bit overkill, but it's fine for an IELTS letter, and there's some vocabulary in there. But as long as you make it clear why you need the time off, so the ceremony will be held on this day, and I would like to take this time off because we'll be driving, and that's how long it takes. Something like that. That is adequate, especially if you add more detail later. So the third paragraph suggests how your work could be covered while you're away. If you have trouble with these first two, this would be a good one to add some extra detail where you could do that. What I've got here is absolutely fine. The overall length of my letter and the level of detail is good. So this is fine. So let's see. So as the wedding is more than a month from now, it will be easy not to schedule any future meetings with clients during this time. Vocabulary about my job. I have already briefed my assistant Michael on the task for the week, and he will be able to cover anything that requires my attention, and I will also be available by mobile if anything urgent comes up. So I haven't really said anything about my job. It's not really clear what my job is. My manager knows and I know, so that's fine. You could go into detail about, if you have a particular job, let's say you're an engineer or you're a computer programmer or you're a doctor or a nurse or something like this, you could talk about your job a bit more specifically in this place. So specifically mentioning the things that you do at your job is a good way to use some vocabulary. And most people know some good topic-specific vocabulary that's related to their job. For me, I didn't do that, but there's enough decent vocabulary there related to work, which is topic-specific vocabulary. So that's fine. Then please let me know your decision at your earliest convenience. Again, that's a formal, polite way to sign off this type of letter. If you can't think of this sentence, you can leave it out. It's not essential. There are examples in the Cambridge books of this exact type of letter without any statement like that at all. So, I mean, it's pretty much implied if you write a letter to your boss, even your fake boss, in your fake job during the IELTS exam, that you are going to be waiting for the answer. So that's a good phrase for letter writing. If you know it, put it in. If not, don't. Kind regards. Kind regards can be used informally, but it's generally used formally, especially in work correspondence nowadays. So that is how I finish my letter with a fake name. You can use your own name, make up names. I had a student who used to sign all of his either Albert Einstein or John Bon Jovi. So whatever name you like is fine. So if we look at the letter in a bit more detail, so I recommend you have a look at the website for this part at some point. But essentially, what I've done here is outlined fixed phrases for letter writing. You can copy those down. Some of them are included in the last lesson in the course, and others you'll just find in the examples. But cohesive devices, referencing devices. So referencing device, you'll see what it means, is something where you refer to something that you've already mentioned. And I'll talk a bit about why you do that in a moment. And then less common vocabulary. So as you can see, most students, when they see what is highlighted as less common vocabulary, they're surprised, because first of all, not very many of them are just a single word. It's usually chunks of language, collocations, groups of words that go together, and it's often groups of simple words that go together. So it's not these simple words that are less common, but it's using them as a phrase, which is less common. So let's have a look. I'm writing to request. You could use that in any type of request. Time off is a good word, but it's from the question, so you wouldn't get credit for that. But if it weren't in the question and you used it, that would be a good one. The reason for my request is. So again, this is kind of combination, fixed phrase and cohesive device. So I'm explaining, what the reason is. My brother who lives in Chicago, planning to attend, that's a phrase. The wedding there. So there's a referencing device. So who lives in Chicago is getting married. So there is Chicago. So it'd be a bit repetitive if I said, my family and I are planning to attend the wedding in Chicago. My brother who lives in Chicago, planning to attend the wedding in Chicago. So referencing devices are ways that you just make it clear that you're referring to something that you already have without sounding mechanical or repetitive. So extended family, many different locations around the country. So cohesive device, it. So the wedding will also serve as a long-awaited family reunion. I highlight these referencing devices just because most people haven't thought about them, but you shouldn't think about them too much unless you get feedback that you need to work on your referencing devices, because generally people use them without really thinking about them. And you don't have to worry about using a variety of referencing devices very much. If you're just naturally doing it, what you want to avoid is what I mentioned before. So just using the noun that you're referring to or the situation you're referring to over and over and over. So Chicago, Chicago, Chicago. That sounds repetitive. So ceremony will be held. So hold a ceremony is a phrase. So again, so, as, also, so, very simple cohesive devices, which is absolutely fine. This way, so driving. Oh, sorry, take leave. This way. So our plan is to drive this way. This way refers to by driving. Have plenty of time to do something. That's a phrase. Stop along the way. That's also a phrase. See the local sites. Another phrase. Again, so see local sites. Stop along the way. None of those are particularly impressive words, but using them together is what English speakers do. So essentially, using language in a way that's going to impress the examiner is basically saying or writing whatever idea you have in one of the ways that an English speaker would do that. So more than a month from now, that's a nice phrase. Schedule any future meetings with clients. So schedule meetings with someone, future meetings with someone. Again, this time, during the time that I'm away. Briefed, that's a single word, but that's a good word that you probably wouldn't hear from a student that often. It means to inform, tell someone about. It's formal, generally. Brief on. That's why this word is blue. On is not by itself an impressive word to use, but so brief someone on something. So brief him on tasks. Cover anything that requires my attention. Another good phrase. Be available on mobile, and if anything urgent comes up. So you can see there's really quite a lot of good vocabulary. I don't give my essays band scores, so I think it's a bit silly. I've been a teacher for 20 years. I'm a former IELTS examiner. I have a lot of experience being an IELTS examiner. I'm a native English speaker. I have publications as a translator, so I know that my use of English is good, and I know that I know how to answer questions on the IELTS test really well. I do not, however, give myself band scores. I don't say I have band 9 sample answers because I think students like to see band 9 sample answer. But that's a bit silly because, first of all, the way students use band 9 sample answers is generally not in a way that helps them improve or helps increase their score. There is a use for sample answers, but reading lots of them won't help. The other thing is, if you technically think about what is band 9, band 9 is a writing sample which has gone through the process and been marked by someone who, in that moment that they're marking it, has been certified by Cambridge to be doing this job and marking that essay. So I'm no longer an examiner, so if I give myself a band 9, it's a bit silly because I'm giving myself a mark. So the other thing is that if you look in the Cambridge books, what they say is this model answer has been prepared by an examiner and is an example of a very good answer. So they don't call it Band 9 either. So to my knowledge, there is only one Band 9 sample answer on the internet, and that is on the IELTS.org site, and it's a student sample that was marked by an examiner in an exam process. So maybe I'm being a bit picky. I'm not saying that, you know, the people who say their answers are Band 9, that they're bad essays. They're good generally, the ones that I've read on the more reputable sites, and you can read them and learn from them. And that's all you need to know. They're definitely very good answers, but I don't want to misrepresent my material as something as Band 9 when it hasn't been marked as Band 9 by Cambridge. And I think it's a small difference, but to me it's important. So basically that doesn't mean that you should worry that the answers that you'll find here are low quality. They are good and they meet all the requirements in terms of all 4 criteria. So let's see. So please let me know your decision at the earliest convenience. There we go. Praise for writing. Praise for writing. Okay. So there you have a formal letter to someone you know. Hopefully that was helpful and you learned something from that lesson. Again, if you haven't seen the lesson notes, check those out and check out the other lessons in the course if you're having trouble with your Task 1 letters.